Well, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and let's all have our flag salute tonight. Have you got the flag, Josh? I pledge allegiance to
the flag
of the United States
of America
and to the
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I believe Councilman Richardson will open us with prayer tonight.
You'll bow your heads with me, please. Gracious, loving, and heavenly Father, we come to you this hour, asking for your blessing and help as we gather here tonight. We pray for your guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in our work. Help us to work together and encourage each other in excellence. We ask this in the precious name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Josh, I'll turn it over to you for a few announcements there.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to share my screen one more time and make sure everybody can see the instructions. For anyone at home that was watching the live stream of the high school graduation commencement ceremony on our Channel 7, if that is not over and you wish to continue watching, you can actually visit the USD 402 YouTube page and just go to youtube.com, type in USD 402, and then look for the live stream. And if that has not completed, then you can go to that link and continue watching. For tonight, you are if you're on the phone or watching on YouTube right now or on Channel 7, this is another one of our virtual meetings for the City Council. There are call-in instructions. We also have public hearings on the agenda for tonight. And so the instructions are for people that wish to participate and listen into the meeting if they're not able to watch on Channel 7 or on YouTube, or wish to actively participate in the public hearing. You dial the number that's on the screen here, 1-312-626-6799, and then you type in that meeting ID number that is on the screen. And when we actually get to the public hearings and council opens up the meeting to public comment, if you wish to speak during those items, or if there's other times during the agenda that you wish to speak, please press *9, and then that'll give staff an indicator that you're wishing to speak, and then we can call on you within the sequence of the agenda. Otherwise, we'll have everybody on mute except for council, so that council can proceed with their conversation. So with that, Mayor, I think that's all the instructions for tonight. I'm going to turn it back over to you to begin the agenda.
Thank you. Well, let's move down here and approve our City Council meeting minutes from May 4th and May 13th. Are there any questions or discussion, Council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve, as Councilman Richardson, I'll move to approve the minutes for the May 4th, 2020 City Council meeting and the May 13th, 2020 Special City Council.
Do I hear a second?
This Councilman Leffler, I'll second the motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Erica has to call the roll. I forgot that.
That's okay. If there are any opposed, then I can take that way.
Go ahead and call the roll.
Okay. Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, let's move down to our appropriation ordinance number 5, dated 5/13 of 2020. Council.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Got a motion and a second. Were there any questions? I don't hear any, so Erica, call the roll, please.
Mr. Slade, were you the second on that motion?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion carries.
I might mention that Councilman Rivas and Councilman Magruder are attending graduation ceremonies, so that's why they're not with us tonight. So at this time, I'll call for visitors. If you're here and you're not in, you have something that is not on the agenda and you'd like to bring it to our attention, this would be the time. And you would have to push *9 and be recognized by our city manager.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I see 8 callers. Again, just to reiterate, press *9 if you would like to speak at this time on an item not on the agenda.
Okay, I see none, so we'll move down to our business. Item number 1 is our public hearing for third round Cdbg Revolving Loan Program. And staff, you got a report there?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'm going to switch back and forth. When we get to the open public hearing, I'm going to switch back to gallery view so I can see people calling in. But for right now, for the staff report, this will be our third round of Cdbg revolving loan funding. Council's already gone through 2 of these. This round is to essentially disperse the remainder of the funds that we have in our revolving loan. There were 2 more businesses that had applied through that online process that we did not have included in the first 2 rounds. Susie did the work contacting them and preparing the materials for tonight, similarly structured to all of the other applications that you have seen. The one note that I will make here, and this will actually come up on a later item when we actually start discussing the Cdbg Cv Grants, which is a new program that's similar to this, but it's the new thing that the state just launched. That one of the requirements of that program is for any cities like ours that have the revolving loan fund, we have to disperse our dollars down to 10,000 or less in order to qualify for that round of grant funding. And so these applications here tonight will actually push us below that number, and we will use the required amount past that threshold so we can actually qualify for that grant funding. That is assuming that one of our applicants who has not yet fully executed all their paperwork does complete that. If they do not, we will have to follow up and see how to proceed from there. But we do have a few signatures we're still waiting on from an earlier round. So for tonight, though, you have 2 applications that are on the agenda for consideration: B&B Apiary, which is a home-based business, and then TDK Inc. doing business as Bricks, which would be downtown. And again, the loans are similarly structured to previous agreements. I don't believe that B&B Apiary has a grant associated with theirs. They are home-based, and so with the home-based businesses, we asked them if they counted their utilities as a business expense. And if they did not, then we did not provide the utility grant. So this is strictly a loan. With that, Mayor and Council, I will turn it over to you if you have any questions of staff before we open the public hearing. Mayor, I believe you're muted.
Okay, Council, did you have any questions?
This Councilman Richardson, I do have a couple here, 1 or 2. In reference to bricks, I noticed on their couple of their answers that they had to close completely, and they want to use the funds for rent and maybe try to open with delivery or curbside. That doesn't give me a warm feeling there. And then it shows that they're going to use the funds for loan payments, lease, utilities, and payroll. Do those all fall within? I mean, I don't get, like I said, I don't get a warm feeling with the fact that it's done 32 on theirs, but I don't get the warm feeling of whether they're going to for sure open up back up or not with this money.
So first question, Councilman Richardson, just do those things qualify? And my surface answer just off of that list is yes. When you're talking about working capital, that covers most anything that a business deals with on a day-to-day basis. The big thing you're looking at with working capital is you're not building a new capital asset, you're not building a new building or constructing something like that. But if you have a monthly payment that you make to something, most anything that falls under that category would qualify as working capital. And so rent should be able to, utilities, payroll, the lease, I assume is their lease payments to, it could be on a car if that's a vehicle expense, it could be on a building if they have expenses in that fashion as well. Loan payments, we would have to explore just a little bit. One of the things I would probably suggest is if they had other loans through the city, which is why we asked that question or looked that up when we were looking at all the other applicants in the earlier rounds, that we didn't want to use one loan to pay off another loan, like an API loan or something else that either the city or kind of a city affiliate business or economic development partner is doing. And so we don't want to use this loan to pay those loans off. So we'll just have to see what loan payments they submit. But if they're paying on a car loan or something like that, then yes, that could be an eligible working capital expense. Beyond that, in terms of feasibility of them reopening, that's something that they would have to speak to more than what I could. I think every business is going to have that challenge with a reopening, and so maybe that's something you can have them speak to in the public hearing if they wish. I don't know that I can answer that for them.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mayor.
Will the payments be dispersed incrementally like they are for some of the others?
Yes, we've done that with all of the others. My one caveat maybe is I think B&B has a really small loan, and I'll have to look and see what we did with the other one. We had a small loan in the second round as well, and I can't remember if that was broken up into disbursements, but I think we treated every business the same. So if that was broken up, we'll do the same thing here and only do a half and half type thing. So the way we were doing that is we would break up the disbursement, and then once they provided invoices evidencing that they had eligible working capital expenses to cover that first disbursement, release the second one. So yes, unless there's something different we'd want to consider maybe on the small loan that's only $1,000, then I think we could break that up. But I think we had an even smaller one in the previous round and probably broke up the disbursement there. But certainly with bricks, their loan is sizable enough that I would break that up.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
And if not, I'm going to stop my screen share and go to gallery view so we can see the folks that are calling in by phone.
Okay. With that, I'll open the public hearing. And if you desire to speak to this, you will need to push *9 and be recognized by our city staff.
Mayor and Council, we have 9 members calling in right now. Again, press *9 if you would wish to speak during this public hearing to consider these 2 loan applications for Cdbg funding. And if not, Council will close the public hearing. *9. Okay, I'm not seeing any, Mayor.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And we'll consider the B&B Apparary Agreement. So council, what do you desire to do there?
I'll make a motion to approve the loan to B&B Apparary for $1,000.
Do I
If you
hear
get a second, yeah, if you get a second, Mayor, I'm just letting you know, I do have someone that just raised their hand, so however you want to
I'll
process.
second that.
Bill seconded. Well, we closed the public hearing, so I'm gonna move on down. So I've got a motion and a second to approve that loan. So Erica, could you take the roll?
Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Let's move down to the bricks agreement.
Again, Mr. Mayor, I was hoping that Ms. Pringle would get on the phone, but I don't feel comfortable with the fact that we didn't get any kind of confirmation from her that she's going to open up her business. And then the purpose of this for us is to hopefully save businesses and to keep them in business in the downtown area. So I'm kind of against bricks with that, for that matter.
Okay, if I don't hear a motion one way or the other, it will die for a lack of activity there. Okay, so be it. So let's move on to item 2 in our business. Final plat for Buckskin Properties produced by Caw Valley. And staff, I'm assuming you have something to report there.
Yes, let me go back to our screen share mode. Okay, Mayor and Council, you should be seeing our packet up on the screen here. Cody is going to be presenting this item. Cody, do you want me to start on the agenda report, or do you want me to just pull up the map? What would be more helpful?
Go ahead and pull up the map if you would, please.
Okay. All right, Mayor and Council, this is an item that's coming to you as a recommendation from Augusta's Planning Commission. And for presentation of this item, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Assistant City Manager Cody Sims.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an issue coming to you from the Augusta Planning Commission. The city planner has worked on this project throughout its duration. This is a one-lot subdivision out at it's near Kellogg Heights. The closest intersection is Indianola and US 54. It is right behind Superior Landscape Management. What they're requesting.
Can you help me find that on this map, Cody, so I can show them? I believe this is Superior right here.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, Josh. On my end, all I see is the plat on my end.
Oh, we're seeing some.
Oh, give me 1 second. I'll switch between screens. Just help orient everybody to where we're at. Is that better?
There we go.
Yep.
Okay. So if you can help me.
Pan north just a little bit. There you go. So right there, that's the area that we're looking at.
In here?
Yep, that's it. So basically, you see those two houses on the left, right there. It's everything east of there and back to that tree row, and then just a little bit of property north at that bend on Southwest 98th Terrace. So this is something that Anita's been working on. The preliminary plat was presented to the Augusta Planning Commission on February 24th, the preliminary plat and the preliminary master drainage plan, and then was presented to the Butler County Commissioners for their review on March 17th. They reviewed it and provided a favorable recommendation back to the Augusta Planning Commission for a review here on May 11th. This is a 12.05 acre tract of land. The purpose of the subdivision is simply to facilitate a land transaction for the development of a single family residential structure. Anita's worked with Butler County staff as well as public safety over in the fire department over in Andover for their requirements to make sure that that what was being split off was indeed compliant with everybody's regulations. Again, this was presented to the Augusta Planning Commission on May 11th. They reviewed it and voted in the affirmative to provide a recommendation to the Augusta City Council for final approval. Final approval with the Augusta City Council, with the Augusta City Council tonight is final on this business item, after which time the property owner will be able to move forward with their side of the transaction and then file the plat with Butler County Register of Deeds. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna turn it back over to council. It's a very simple business item. And again, this is out in the growth area, almost out of our growth area, actually, to the west.
Council, what's your desire?
Mike Huddleston here.
Yep.
I've got just a question as to what roadway will provide access to this property?
That's a good question, Councilman Huddleston. It would be on Southwest 98th Terrace. Josh, if you could go back over to the map. It'll be the dirt road on the north side. There you go. So, yeah, pretty much right there where that dirt road bends, Josh, you're real close to it. That's the dirt road that's going to provide access to this property. It's shown as Southwest East Road. Southwest 95th Street. So that's going to be the point of ingress egress for this property, Councilman.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
This is Councilman Richardson. I'll make a motion to accept the Augusta Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the Buckskin Addition final plat produced by Call Valley Engineering.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or discussion? Okay, Erica, will you call the roll?
Burke,
Yes.
Crum. Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes,
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. If it seems like I'm moving a little slow, I'm trying to give you all time to log in a response because I'm afraid that if I move too fast, I'll miss somebody. Okay, item number 3, conveyance, assignment, and bill of sale between the City of Augusta and MVP Logistics LLC for a natural gas pipeline serving the City of Augusta, electric power plant number 2. Staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this item is a continuation and hopefully the final of the many steps that we have taken to formally acquire that gas pipeline that services our electric plant number 2. You've taken a lot of actions in prior meetings over the last couple of months to get to this point. And if I understand it correctly from staff, this is the final agreement to have that pipeline turned over to us. Our Public Utilities Director, Tim Johnson, and the City Attorney reviewed and worked on the agreement with the gas company together. And so we are presenting that here tonight. To present this item, I'm going to turn it over to our Public Utilities Director, Tim Johnson.
Thank you, Josh, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Josh, would you do me a favor and scroll down to the aerial of the pipeline in the staff report, please? Council, remember that last year, the city learned that MVP Logistics would be terminating gas service to the city's electric generators through a pipeline owned by that company. You considered several alternatives and ultimately decided that the best and most cost-effective course of action was to acquire the pipeline, the easement, and all the appurtenances, and operate the line yourselves or as a city. In December, the council directed staff to authorize MVP Logistics to begin the process of transferring the property to the city of Augusta. And then in March, you approved a pipeline license agreement with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway to require a crossing of their right-of-way for this line. And then last month, you approved a contract for services with Utility Safety and Design to provide for maintenance and operation of the line. This evening is the final phase in the acquisition of the pipeline. And what we're asking you to do is to consider a document transferring the pipeline, the easements, the permits, and everything else associated with that pipeline. The cost to the city of approving tonight's document will be $10, along with the cost of recording the documents associated with the transaction. These are in addition to the costs that you agreed to last month with USDI to provide operation and maintenance and training for city staff. Those costs are $20,460 in year one, and then just under $16,000 each year thereafter. This evening, we're asking that you approve this conveyance assignment and bill of sale with MVP Logistics, which will transfer the natural gas pipeline serving power plant number 2 to the city. From there, we will have all the documents signed and transfer copies to MVP, as well as finalize the remaining documents with BNSF and USDI and have them all recorded. And we will be in the gas pipeline business. That's all I have. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Council, any questions?
This is Councilman Richardson. Mr. Johnson, I just got one quick question for you, just informational wise. Have all of our employees completed the training on that?
3 of the power plant employees have. The remainder will, once we begin working directly with USDI. Part of that agreement is that they provide training to us.
Sure.
Simply got a head start a few months ago and got some training on our own.
Okay, and what's the remainder number, sir?
I'm sorry, what?
What is that remainder number? How many employees remain to be trained?
I believe it's 3, maybe 4.
Okay.
But certainly 3.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Councilman Leffler. I move for the approval of conveyance, assignment, and bill of sale with MVP Logistics LLC for a natural gas pipeline serving the city of Augusta Electrical Power Plant number 2.
Huddleston will second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Are there any other questions? Erica, would you call the roll?
Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Let's move to item 4, the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act Airport Grant Agreement for the Augusta Municipal Airport. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is an item that you may recognize. I did send a couple of emails out over the past month or so. As the Federal CARES Act was being passed, there was an announcement made that funding to some FAA obligated airports would be flowing in from that federal act. And the city actually received notification from our congressman, from several other sources, that we had a grant approved that was going to be coming to us just to assist with our operations. And this is that actual grant, the actual document that those notices were alerting us to. So for presentation of this item, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant City Manager Cody.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this issue is coming to you. It's very similar actually to the Cdbg grants that you've been considering here over the past couple of meetings. In that the CARES Act funding is $30,000 for the Augusta Municipal Airport. Its intention is to help offset some of the lost revenue that that NIPIAS airports have experienced because of the downturn in traffic. For the Augusta Municipal Airport, how that translates is reduced traffic, therefore reduced fuel sales. And as we're aware, fuel sales and hangar rent accounts for a significant majority of the revenue that we get out at Augusta Municipal Airport to run the airport. I tried to paint a bit of a picture for you in the staff report showing where we're at year to date with not only fuel expenditures, but also fuel revenues. And the month of April was pretty rough on the airport. We were down about 46% in revenue from where we were April of 2019. Over the 3-year average, 2017, 2018, 2019, we were down about 38%. So not being able to bring in that revenue certainly had an impact on us. The good news is so far this month, we've almost made as much as we did in April. So I think that we're going to be better off here over the next couple of months, especially throughout the rest of this month, but only time will tell. What we have tonight is the grant agreement between the City of Augusta and the Federal Aviation Administration, which we are asking for your approval. The council provides that approval. What I'm seeking is permission to essentially sign the grant agreement, at which time, which is all done electronically, at which time it will automatically send a message back to the FAA and then automatically send a message over to Austin. And he will have to do the same one-click approval through this online approval form that the FAA is using. So this $30,000 can go for working capital. So for us, some of these specifics, we could use it for salaries. We could use it for the purchase of fuel. My recommendation would be to use it to get reimbursements on the purchase of 100 low lead aviation gasoline. It is a reimbursement. So the next load of fuel, say the council approves this, the next load of fuel, the city would have to pay for that and then submit invoices through the e-invoicing system through the FAA. It's called Delphi. And then we would get a reimbursement for that amount. And then we just draw down on that 30,000 until we've exhausted all the funds. And then we'd be back to our operating budget. But I think the $30,000 could get us, if we're buying 100 low lead aviation gasoline summertime, I think we could get out pretty easily into the August timeframe before we've exhausted that. And then we'd use the remainder of our budget throughout the remainder of 2020. It's 100% grant, so there's no local share from the city. So this is just 100% money coming from the federal government to try to shore up revenues lost to federally funded airports. Mr. Mayor, with that, I'm going to turn it over to council for consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions?
Councilman Richardson, to Mr. Sims, is there any downside to this at all, Cody?
No, no, absolutely not. It's, the CARES Act has been drafted to provide financial resources in a number of different facets of the economy, and understanding the value and the importance of airports to our economy, the value and the importance of the Augusta Municipal Airport into this region and to our local economy. No, sir, I do not see a downside if we do not accept. I do see a downside if we do not, and because it will be passing up money that would provide relief on our budget.
Well, I'd like to say thank you for doing this and looking into this and taking care of this. With that, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager and the city attorney, the assistant city manager and the city attorney to execute CARES Act Airport Grant Agreement number 3-20-006-019-2020, providing the Augusta Municipal Airport $30,000 in federal funding to cover operating expenses in light of the COVID-19 pandemic.
This is Councilman Leffler. I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept this grant. Any other questions? Erica, could you call the roll, please?
Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Let's move down to item 5. Schedule a public hearing for the application to the Kansas Department of Commerce for a Cdbg Cv funding. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is the continuation of the special meeting that we had last week after the announcement of a new program through the state to provide additional assistance for businesses. The state received an allocation of funding from the federal government under the CARES Act, and they are making a portion of that funding, approximately $9 million, available for this brand new program that they are rolling out that they are calling Cdbg Cv. And this program is actually very similar in a lot of ways to the revolving loan fund that the city has. The biggest difference is that these are only going to be used for grants. They are providing straight up grants to businesses as part of this program. They do have caps on them, but they are grants. They are not loans. The governor made this announcement, I believe, on Monday of last week, and then their staff scrambled to put everything together and had online applications ready for Tuesday, and then they had a question and answer session where potential applicants could call in Wednesday. And so we participated in that call-in, got a little bit more information on the program. It'll be administered, again, very similar to our revolving loan, and so I think that we have a pretty decent infrastructure in place to get agreements and things processed fairly quickly. The difference here is that this is considered a brand new Cdbg grant, whereas our revolving loan we've had since the 80s. And so we're going to have to comply with a lot of the upfront work to submit the grant application. And that's the reason for the resolution you did the other night, and also for the item that you have on this agenda to formally schedule a public hearing. We are required to publish notice, have it out there for a certain period of days. And June 1st is the earliest meeting date that we could have that public hearing and be compliant with the Cdbg rules. A little bit more about the program. This is going to be different than our revolving loan in the sense that the city will never actually be in possession of the grant funding. My understanding from the state is that businesses will submit their invoices to us being the city. We will then submit their invoices to the state of Kansas. The state of Kansas will then pay those invoices directly until the grant funds are fully exhausted. So that's kind of a new distinction or development in this program. Historically, the city has the funding and handles that processing. Now we're still processing, but we're just sending it up to the state, and they are making payments to vendors directly. So that is a new development. Another new development is just has to do with some of the general structure of this. They have always had a cap on a per job basis. In this case, since it is 100% grant, that same cap applies, but the business itself is capped at a total dollar amount. And I believe those dollar amounts are $30,000 and $50,000 respectively. $30,000 is the biggest grant that I believe an employer with under 5 employees can get. And then a business that has, I think, 6 to 50 employees can get a grant of $50,000. There is quite a lengthy application that we have to fill out to provide a lot of the upfront information that CDBG normally requires. I believe on the question and answer session that the state provided some conflicting information about whether a grant administrator is actually required on this project. So I need to follow up with them to see if that is a requirement or if it's something that staff can do in-house. If it is a requirement, then I was planning on reaching out to Rosemary Saunders, who actually helped us with this CDBG application and was our consultant throughout that process on the sanitary sewer project. If it's not required and staff is able to fill out that application and follow all of the requirements of the program, then I'm fine doing that as well. Again, they don't seem as onerous as any other grants and CDBG stuff that we've done, but we will verify for sure if we have to hire a grant administrator. If we do, that grant administrator is likely to cost in the $10,000 range. I'm doing that off of historical experience. I don't have an actual price or a quote from anyone yet. Those costs would be eligible for reimbursement under this grant process to the city, so we would not be out any money. So I do have a list of things that I wrote down notes from the Q&A session the other day, so I'll probably hold off on answering anything else unless you all have questions tonight. Maybe we can do a little bit more on the Q&A during the public hearing in June. The item tonight is just a resolution to formally schedule that hearing. The last thing I will say before I turn it over to council is the other requirement that is unique to our community and the other 36 communities that have a revolving loan fund is that our balance in terms of cash on hand in that revolving loan fund has to be below $10,000 within 90 days in order for us to qualify for this grant. And so with bricks not being approved tonight, we still have $16,000, $17,000 available. So we need to loan out at least an additional 7 or 8, or we will not qualify for this program. So with that, I'll turn it over to council if you have any questions.
Okay, council, any questions?
Josh, Mike Huddleston here.
Yes.
Are there going to be any restrictions on this grant application based on any of the programs that the businesses have participated in? For instance, if we've already given them a CDBG, will they still qualify to come back for this grant program? If they have participated in the PPP CARES Act program, will they still be able to participate in this program?
Okay. So the first part of your question, my understanding from the state regarding our revolving loan is if we choose to, we can make this available to any of our businesses that have already qualified for a revolving loan. To the second point that you asked about, if a business has participated in the PPP, the federal process, or if there's some other grant program that the federal government has put out that they were able to get funding for, this money cannot be used to double dip that funding. So if they accepted PPP money to help pay for payroll expenses would not be an eligible working capital expense under this grant. So the first part, yes, you have some discretion on whether you want to include, and then the second part, no, they cannot double dip on federal programs.
So if we approve this tonight, when would be the first time that we would be putting out notice to businesses that they could apply for grants?
I'm going to say probably mid-June. And the reason I say that is in order to make a level playing field in terms of processing applications at the state level, because this is a first come, first served program. The way the state did it is they require everybody to do the public hearing, to have the appropriate amount of days. And then you're allowed to submit the application, and then they will go off of when applications were submitted in sequence. They have about a 15-day review period, and then the state will notify if your city qualified and will be receiving the grant. At that time, I think that they will give us permission to proceed in accepting applications. And so I think mid-June is the earliest that we would make some kind of announcement. And initially, I was thinking we would be able to use the existing applications that were already submitted through our online process for revolving loan. I think for clarity and cleanliness, we just start over with something new for tracking purposes. And so when we get to mid-June and once they've authorized us, we will make announcements at that point.
And certainly by the first meeting in June, we'll want to decide if we want to allow previous loan that have been approved, whether or not they're going to be eligible.
Yes, I think that's something council will need to weigh in on. I mean, my initial inclination is there's a lot of programs out there, and it would be nice in my mind to try to spread this funding to as many businesses as possible. So my thought would be to try to get new ones in there. Now, the way that the program is, the city can request up to $300,000, but there's going to be caps at that $30,000 or $50,000 per business. So on the high end, we could have 10 businesses get it. On the low end, that's only 6 businesses. And one of the things I will do if council approves this tonight is maybe put some feelers out there and try to get an idea, just for the sake of our application to the state even, of what businesses are left that would consider applying for this, because that's part of the information I have to provide in the upfront application when determining our amount, is just how many businesses may actually need this. So through the first 3 programs on the revolving loan, the first 3 rounds of applications, we essentially exhausted our list of folks. And so I am going to have to put feelers out there just to see if there's anybody left that might qualify, to know whether $300,000 is the right amount to request.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? I'd entertain a motion to approve this.
Councilman Richardson, I'll make a motion to set up public hearing on June 1st at their council meeting, discuss the submission of application to the Kansas Department of Commerce for Cdbg Cv funding for economic development purposes, to obtain $300,000 in funding to make grants to small businesses to assist with reopening and result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Erica, can you call the roll, please?
Burke,
Yes.
Fromm,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Let's move to item 6. Proposed resolution number 2020-07, declaring the necessity of condemning certain real property, authorizing a survey of said real property, and providing for publication in the official city newspaper. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is the formal action items to begin a process that we had previously brought in outside counsel to help advise us on for presentation of this item. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant City Manager Cody Sims. Cody, if you're speaking, you're on mute. Okay, there
Yeah,
you
I couldn't get my mouse to work. Mr. Mayor and Council, this is an issue. If you recall back to the April 20th meeting, the council approved a letter of engagement with David Rapp at Hinkle Law Firm to serve as a special counsel to the city for the condemnation process. Since that time, I've had quite a bit of interaction via email with Mr. Rapp and his team regarding the project. They've made visits out to the site, and I know that Mr. Rapp has had at least 2 conversations with the property owner's attorney, trying to come to some sort of a amicable resolution without having to go through the condemnation process. Unfortunately, the conversations have not produced the results we were hoping for. And it does look like that we are still on track for court action to come to a resolution. So we're essentially moving into the next phase. So if you, part of this business item discusses the authorization of a survey of the real property. That survey has been created through Benish and the original land acquisition contract that the city council approved back in January. So that is an exhibit for the potential condemnation hearing. So what we're looking at tonight is the approval of a proposed resolution deeming it necessary to condemn the 51.11 acres of land at 12763 Southwest 110th Street. So what that resolution does is it essentially puts everybody on notice that this is our intention to condemn this property. And so with council's approval tonight, then I will work with the city clerk to get this published in the official city newspaper, so in the Butler County Times Gazette. And once that is, it has to publish once. Once it is published, and then at the June 1st meeting, I will come back to the city council with an ordinance that essentially, well, it doesn't essentially, the intent of the ordinance is to condemn the land, for council to legally take their position on the land. So the resolution that we're looking at tonight, what it does is it puts everybody on notice of council's intention. We'll publish it in the newspaper, and then at the next meeting, at the June 1st meeting, then we'll come back with an ordinance that will finalize the condemnation, and then the resolution and the ordinance will be sent over to Dave Rapp and Hinkle Law Firm, and they will use that with their pleadings that will then be filed in Butler County District Court to move forward with the condemnation process. Austin did put together a memo that outlined the process and the timelines that we're looking at. Now, I have no idea how COVID is going to impact this and what the backlog of cases may be through Butler County District Court and how that's going to impact our timing. We have been working through this land acquisition process, and especially since COVID really flared up, to get this done under federal fiscal year 20, because if you recall, the federal government for all AIP projects, all airport improvement program projects, the federal government is paying 100% of the costs. Certainly that's still my goal to get this done during federal fiscal year 20. And I've communicated that back to special counsel at Hinkle as well. So that's what we're working towards. That's the intent of this resolution, is to basically declare our intentions. We will publish that, and then we'll follow up on June 1st with an ordinance that will finalize the condemnation. Mr. Mayor, with that, I'll turn it back over to council for consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
And if I could just add, it's Austin, just very briefly. The timeline that I had was I constructed it in 2015. I sent it to outside counsel. Apparently, a few of the dates changed so that it's no longer 10 days, it's 14 days on some of the wait periods under state statute in the most recent update. So there will be a little bit, they're not material changes, but there's just some date changes that are in there that I wanted you to be aware of. So it's not a material extension of time under state statute, but a few days. They
So
updated
Austin,
state statute.
Can you clarify how that works with our meeting schedule then? So we're here on the 18th, and then the 1st is what, 5? Is that within that 14 days, or are you saying that pushes us out to the second meeting in June and we're not?
No, that's the court process. Good question, Josh.
Oh,
it's just
okay.
the court process. It's
Gotcha.
by the next meeting we'll have our. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Council, you got any questions, or are you ready to make an announcement here?
This is Councilman Leffler. I move for approval of proposed resolution number 2020-07, declaring the necessity of condemning 51.11 acres of land located at 12,763 Southwest 110th Street, denoted as partial 2 on the boundary survey produced by Alfred Benish and Company to support the expansion of the Augusta Municipal Airport.
Do I hear a second?
Councilman Richardson, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution. Erica, could you call the roll?
Burke, Burke.
No.
No. Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade.
Yes.
Motion carries with Burke voting in opposition.
Thank you. Okay, let's move down to item 7, the supplemental appraisal services agreement with Keller Craig and Associates. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, not quite a continuation, but this is related to the item that you just approved. So with that, I want to turn it over to Assistant City Manager Cody Sims to explain.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is associated with the condemnation process for the land south of the airport. Mr. Rapp has been working to assemble his team for the city in going through and preparing for the condemnation hearings, any pre-hearing conferences that may take place. And part of that is getting the appraiser under contract who created the primary appraisal for the condemnation process. This is Tim Keller with Keller Craig and Associates. If you recall, throughout the land acquisition process, there was a primary appraiser and a review appraiser. Mr. Keller was the primary appraiser for the initial appraisal of the project. And so Dave Rapp has had a couple of conversations with him and has recommended that we get him under contract. That way we can use him as our expert witness as it comes to the condemnation process, any pre-hearing conferences, condemnation hearings, whatever the case may be, for that process. I believe in my staff report, it says that Mr. Keller's hourly rate is $300 per hour. And this, if we look back to the original proposal for land acquisition, he did make mention in his original submission that the cost of pre-hearing, hearing, and court testimony, if required, would be billed separately at that $300 per hour rate. So this action is consistent with kind of the way this whole process has been going from the very beginning. So Mr. Mayor, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to council for further consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions, council?
This is Councilman Leffler. I move for approval of supplemental appraisal services agreement with Keller, Craig and Associates, and authorize the city's special counsel to execute the agreement.
Do I hear a second?
Jamie will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Erica, could you call the roll?
Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. We'll go down now to item 8, our proposed ordinance number 2162 for issuing citations for non-compliance with the City Lake and Santa Fe Lake permit fees, and the proposed fee schedule resolution number 2020-08. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this item, however you're comfortable proceeding tonight, to give you a little bit of background. Mayor, I believe you were recently contacted by, I assume fishermen or just folks who live around the lake. They've been talking about the additional traffic up there and actually interacting with folks that they said do not have permits and have expressed some of their dissatisfaction with our ability to keep up with folks that are perhaps fishing and not using permits and putting boats on the water and not using permits. So that's not necessarily the origin of this action, because it's something that we've talked about for a while as an enforcement mechanism, but that would kind of be a prime indicator number one of why we're looking at this. So the question, I guess, that we're trying to answer is how best to handle those types of enforcement actions. City Lake and Santa Fe Lake are isolated and separated from the city in a number of ways. Santa Fe Lake more so. And so if you're using police officers to respond, there is an efficiency issue with that. There's a variety of different challenges. This also requires a lot more resources to send officers to those locations, but they can do it. One of the challenges we have right now is that we are down quite a few officers. And so we've been talking about maybe how best to run the enforcement mechanism regarding fishing permits and boating permits. So under our existing city code, the animal control officer has citation authority, but it is limited to the animal control ordinance, which the fishing permit requirement is not in. And so when we spoke with the city attorney, in order to have the animal control officer, who is typically out and patrolling and historically has been the person that did a lot of our patrols around City Lake, the idea was, or the thought was, that the existing code, because it was specific to that section, that animal control section, it did not give them the authority to actually enforce boating permits and fishing permits up there. And so they would always have to call out a public safety officer to do so. Santa Fe Lakes, similarly, like unlike animal control, it doesn't have a specific authorization in our city code for the caretaker to issue citations for the permits that he issues out there. So he, being the caretaker and city manager under our code, have authority to revoke all privileges, but it doesn't say anything about being able to issue a citation. And so with the traffic that he's experienced increasing over the last couple of years, I know this was one of the ideas. I feel like he threw this out to Park Board a couple of years ago. I don't know if we talked about it much since then, but it threw this out there as a way of trying to mitigate folks that go out there and utilize the facilities without paying their permit fees. And so the idea behind this ordinance was specifically related to those two positions, was giving animal control officer the authority to enforce the fishing and boating permits at City Lake by issuing a citation, and to give the caretaker at at City Lake, and then give the caretaker at Santa Fe Lake the authority to issue citations for folks that do not acquire permits out there. So the city attorney drafted what's really a simple ordinance. I know I've already spoken with a council member today that maybe the simplicity of it adds complication. If you would like to see it be more specific to these certain positions we were asking for, then we could certainly look at doing that. But it was drafted to give me the authority to designate employees to issue those citations. So again, that's kind of the background origin of where this is coming from. Real quick, I'm going to pull up a different screen share and let you guys see this. Give me 1 second. Okay, so what you're seeing on the screen right now is the relevant sections of code that I could find pertaining to this issue. So the first one is the animal control officer. The animal control officer currently has citation authority, but it is limited to the provisions of the chapter. So that's what keeps them from enforcing the fishing permits. Our code requires that all persons fishing at the lake shall obtain a fishing license. So that's a requirement. It's something that we're expected to enforce by our code. We have authority, either the caretaker, public safety officer, or other person authorized by the city to enforce this article has the power to revoke the licenses at their discretion, but doesn't have any citation authority with that, unless it's, I guess, a public safety officer. And then the caretaker at Santa Fe Lake under our existing code has privileges along with the city manager to revoke a person's access for violation of rules and ordinances, but does not have explicit citation authority. So that's kind of a review of what your existing code has in it. This is something new in the sense of it adding citation authority to those two positions. The fee schedule resolution that council approved historically actually has a fee in it, I believe, for Santa Fe Lake that says if someone is caught without a permit, that there is a citation fee or a fine or whatever it's called in that fee schedule resolution of $50 plus the relevant permit cost. So you have previously taken action to put that in your fee schedule to make that a citation. But in our belief, the person who's in the best position to enforce that, the caretaker, doesn't have the authority to issue the citation. And so in the fee schedule resolution, what you will see is a recommendation just to be consistent with something that you already approved and make that same $50 citation fee plus permit cost the actual penalty at City Lake as well. So there's a couple of different things going on here. Again, this is the first time you've seen it as council. It has been discussed at Park Board, it hasn't been recent. I think that's been in years past where that idea came up. And the idea of animal control. Animal control has been doing a lot of our patrols at City Lake for quite some time. And there was an idea floated a while ago to city attorney and public safety, and they like the idea of trying to get that authority to cite in animal control's hands. But this is the first time we've drafted something up to bring it to your attention. So again, staff's comfortable however you want to proceed tonight. If you want to look at revising this or doing something else with it, we can do that. Again, I think for the sake of simplicity, that's how it was drafted. But if the simplicity leaves too many unanswered questions, and staff's just as comfortable with you directing us accordingly how you'd like to proceed on this. So with that, I'm going to stop my screen share and go back to everybody for the conversation.
And Josh, this is Austin. If I could briefly comment and just add one more sidebar to it for everyone's consideration. Throughout the years, we've had several instances of enforcement with questions about how enforcement might work, not just in this context, but in other contexts. And so specifically, when we first rolled out, but we had a number of problems years ago with sanitation and how trash was being dealt with. And we struggled at that point. This is maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We struggled at that point with trying to identify a suitable solution that would allow for a warning to be issued and then a citation. And we developed a warning system that individual sanitation employees were able to deploy. But then the question of citation and how that over the years, there really wasn't a good mechanism to do a citation for that. And that's just one instance. I don't think that, and it wasn't intended that this would create some type of a blanket. Josh is talking about the simplicity, and it was drafted with simplicity in mind. And it wasn't intended that it would create a blanket enforcement mechanism for all things within the city. But the idea being that if with the backstop of the city manager designating the individual that can enforce, it would empower individuals to have a significant or additional level of enforcement in several different operations. Whether or not we've got we've got the local code officers that we're following through within our nuisance abatement process, and there's another issue that arises or there's a problem with it that requires a citation to be issued. It empowers them to deal with that without always having to involve ADPS. But at the same time,
I was going to say, Austin, before you go too far with that, where I would disagree is we aren't currently asking for that or pushing that on the code enforcement side. I see these two. Now, if it allows that, then I can understand the question and why council maybe wants to get more specific, but staff was not pushing it for the actual nuisance abatement code enforcement purpose at this time. And the distinction that I see is when you're dealing with code enforcement, you're involving actions on private properties. And that's why there's all the different requirements on hearings and those sort of things. In this case, for these two officers, they're enforcing permits that the city issues for public property. And that's why I was comfortable making that designation. I think if you're going to go the route of having code officers do it, I do think it would require a little bit more detailed conversation with council before we go that direction. Has been brought up by council before. So I'm not opposed to going that direction, but I think that conversation is a bit more complex in my mind than what we're asking for tonight. So just before you say too much on the nuisance part, I just want to make staff's intentions clear that that's not what we're asking for tonight, and that wasn't our intent behind this.
Absolutely, Josh. And that was made clear to me when I was drafting. And so I drafted it for simplicity's sake to allow the city manager to designate. And then I started to think, well, with the designation, because the governing body has the ability by motion to designate how the city manager would enforce or apply this type of a distinction, if for now, for the sake of simplicity, it's been drafted in this way, but if the governing body wishes that only the city manager designate 2 employees at this point, the governing body could direct the city manager by motion to only appoint 2 employees at this point, or 3 employees, and then revisit it subsequently. Or I would be happy to draft it in any way. I just wanted to provide some color and some additional facts for consideration. But absolutely, I echo what Josh said. It was not intended to open it up for code enforcement purposes. It's just with the simplicity comes breadth, and with the breadth, there's many options down the road if there's a desire from the governing body to expand.
Okay, so with that, I don't have anything further, council. I'll turn it over to you for conversation.
This is Mike Huddleston here. I was quite surprised when I saw this ordinance in the packet this weekend, because to my knowledge, we haven't had much discussion on it in the past. And in fact, it wasn't even an item for a workshop. But the ordinance itself, as several have pointed out, is very simple. But that simplicity, in my opinion, opens up a whole new way of enforcing laws in Augusta that have never been done before. It's allowing city employees to actually force people into municipal court to comply with any ordinance of the code. Now, I understand the intent in this case for specification at just Santa Fe Lake and maybe some city lake enforcement, but that's not what this ordinance says. It's not focused. It's not purposeful. It's broad brush painting. And I'm not comfortable with it at this time. I think it needs a little more work. I'm not against what the intent is, but I'm against the way this ordinance is worded. I've talked to a few citizens, because they've not had much time because this just came up this weekend. And all of them that I've showed this ordinance to are not real happy with it. So I think in order to maintain some integrity with what we're trying to accomplish with the intent of what we want the ordinance to do, I think we need to go back and work on this a little bit and get it more finely defined and tuned to accomplish a specific purpose and not just this broad ordinance doing what it says, opening it up for all. That's my opinion, and therefore I would like to see us maybe table this for a while and get a little more input and definition on what we're actually trying to accomplish here.
Any other person want to weigh in on that?
I had a question. As far as, with animal patrol, a lot of the fishing occurs on the weekends and evenings. Is that going to be more difficult to monitor with the hours that they normally, are working? Are you going to have to add hours to monitor that?
Yeah, so Councilman Slade, I think that, look at kind of the logistical challenge. It is a logistical challenge, period. But what we're not doing with this ordinance is making animal control the exclusive person with citation ability. Right now, under our code, as we understand it, public safety officers are the only ones with the citation authority. And that works well if they're the ones that are always patrolling around the lake. Historically, and over the last few years, we have had the animal control officer do a lot of that patrolling, and they've been really helpful and communicating with people on the shoreline and stuff like that, yet they have no citation authority backing it if they come across somebody that does not have their permit. So in order to take that action, they would have to call an officer out. And so that's what this is doing, is it's giving them that authority so they don't have to call that officer out. So it's not making them the exclusive authority, but it's adding additional authority. So if something were to happen overnight hours or on weekends or something, then it's very likely officers will still be called out to respond to it. But during the week, they may not have to as much if the animal control officer has this authority. And same thing with Santa Fe Lake is right now it would be an officer that has to go out to Santa Fe Lake. And so it would grant an additional authority to the caretaker to cite people for the permits, because he issues the permits. If they do not get a permit from him, then he would also be the citation authority for not getting a permit from him. So that's what it does. It just adds that capability.
So Josh, along those same lines, I was talking to Rod this afternoon, and he had mentioned that his staff, especially during the real busy times like we're getting ready to find ourselves in with the holidays, spend anywhere from 20 to 40 man hours a week monitoring monitoring who's coming into the park without a permit, which comes at a cost of several $100s to the city for those folks that are just pulling in the park and then pulling into a parking spot, getting out and going to the trails or whatever the case may be. But Rod did specifically bring that up, that he estimates between 20 and 40 man hours a week are spent trying to enforce the issuance of permits. And he says, certainly we can't get everybody. And that does come at a pretty hefty cost to the operations out there at Santa Fe Lake.
So the challenge at Santa Fe is really a logistical one. There is that one roadway in and out. And you have private properties that are located along that roadway, but it's the only roadway to really access our park. So that's one logistical challenge that makes it complicated sometimes to tell who lives there, who's visiting someone that lives there, and then who's actually attending the park. The other logistical challenge is that the caretaker home and the permit office are a ways into the park. And there's a couple of different ways to access the trails and other locations where someone could pull in and park. And this happens a good amount of time, especially if someone's new to that facility and doesn't know that there's permit requirements, even though there's signage up the front. They'll park and take off, and then staff ends up encountering them later, or has to chase them down, or essentially they have a vehicle there that is required to have a permit posted on their windshield and they don't. And they've got to figure out what to do with that at that point. So there, some of this could be mitigated if those logistical challenges didn't exist, but they do. And so this is just one way to give them some additional authority to try to get a handle on that.
This is Councilman Leffler. Josh, would it do the same thing if you change the wording where it says citation written by any employee empowered to write such citations, and change that from any employee to animal control officer and caretaker of Santa Fe Lake? Would that still accomplish what you're trying to do?
Yeah. Like I said, we're only asking for those two positions and for the specific purpose of the lake permits and the permits associated with the park. So it could, I don't know if you want to do that on the fly, or if you just want us to actually formally redraft that and bring it back to you and be more explicit. I think at the very least, that's what Councilman Huddleston was asking, to be more explicit with it. And so we could do that and bring it back, so you wouldn't have to do that on the fly tonight. But yes, I think it is that simple if you're comfortable with those two positions for those specific purposes. If there's a broader question of whether you like this concept at all, then you just need to give us direction on how you want us to bring that back to you at some point.
Well, Josh, that's the way I feel about it. I have no problem with the animal control person enforcing these rules, and being Santa Fe Lake is the distance it is from here in the city, it would be much easier if Rod had that ability out there to enforce the rules out there and have the power to do it. I mean, it's one thing to be able to tell people things, but if you don't have the power to back it when it goes to court, it doesn't do us much good.
I agree with you, Tom.
I agree too.
This is Councilman Richardson. I got a quick question. Has anybody gone over this with the city prosecutor? Are they back behind this, or are we, if we take these to them, are they gonna run them through our court system? Are they gonna say, hey, this is not a top priority, as some of the things we've had in the past?
So the question of whether we've run it past the prosecutor, no. So we have we have nuisance abatement and other things that we do that shifted over, and council started handling that at the council level. And I know there's been questions about that and whether you want to continue to go that route or push things back over to municipal court. And so right now the municipal court is the citation, is essentially the entity that the citation is going to. It's just the public safety officers issuing that. So I think it's certainly a valid question to run by the prosecutor, in the sense of making sure that the caretaker and the animal control officer are trained and appropriately filling out the citation, and making it clear that whatever form we're going to use for that is something that the prosecutor will back. Again, the animal control officer already has citation authority, so there's some familiarity with that process that goes through municipal court right now. So this is just adding a layer to it for fishing permits. Really, the newest thing would be Santa Fe Lake. And so it probably wouldn't hurt to have that conversation with them, which again is a pretty good reason why we could just bring this back and make sure that question gets answered by the prosecutor. Now, is it going to be a high priority compared to other things? I don't know. I don't know if it would be or not. If we communicate that it's a top priority, I suppose. But otherwise, I assume they prioritize it the way they do if an officer brings in a fishing permit case right now.
Right.
And I don't know if that happens very often.
Right. I'm
Now,
just
with these cases, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just worried about, that if our efforts go in vain, we send our animal control officer out there, or send Rod over there and he does this, issues a citation, it goes to our court, and then they're thrown out. Then it kind of goes in vain. It goes against what we need to be doing anyway.
This is Pete Sage. Could I step in for a second?
Yes, sir.
So my experience with the prosecutor has been is if the person who's issuing the citation is authorized and the offense is prohibited by ordinance, he prosecutes it like any other case. Now, I think it is a good idea to have a conversation with him to see whether or not he wants to continue to use a citation that's in the same form. I'd envision we would just supply the caretaker and the animal control officer just continue to use the same citations they're currently supplied. So it certainly makes sense to work with him to see if he'd prefer a different form. But as long as the person is authorized and the ordinance that they're writing the citation to is prohibited, the act is prohibited, they're authorized to write it, he's going to proceed like he would any other case. That's my experience with him.
And Chief, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, like compared to other citations. Again, I'm certainly not a prosecutor and not an officer either that deals with this, but my assumption would be that whether someone has a permit or not is kind of a yes, no, on, off switch. There's not a whole lot of discretion. There's not a whole lot of subjectivity. I don't know if you run into that more with speeding cases, or if you guys have to do a lot more to prove something in court when it comes to other types of citations that you issue. But my thought on a permit is, did they have it, did they not, when you inquired with them? And go ahead.
It's an easy case to prove because you either do or you don't. But typically before a citation's issued, they're educated or given an opportunity to get the license. And then when they don't get a license, that's when a ticket's issued. And that just helps in court because it shows that we tried to work with the person. They still did not comply. We gave them notice of the, where they were in violation. We gave them an opportunity to correct it. They didn't. And then we wrote the citation.
Yeah. So counsel, with that, again, we're perfectly comfortable whatever direction you want to go, but we would be happy to take this back, make it a bit more explicit to the purpose for which we were intending tonight with those two folks, and exactly what they would be enforcing, and have that brought up at a future meeting for you to consider at that time, if you're comfortable with that action.
Well, I would like to see it brought back in a more focused form. And I don't think this is necessarily an emergency that we have to take care of tonight. I doubt if a few weeks is going to cause any great hardship on the city to make sure we get more clearly defined and focused ordinance.
Do you need a motion to bring it back, Josh, or do we just need to let that go like that?
Austin, I don't know if you need to weigh in on this. I can just bring it back. Do we actually need counsel to table it, or can we just decide it's not on the agenda?
The council's already expressed their intent. We don't have to table it. We'll just bring it back in another meeting.
Okay. So I will ask that though, is that council's intent? Just want to make sure of that before we do that. Being the majority of council.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion and bring it to a vote. So I'll make a motion to consider approval of proposed ordinance 2162, authorizing the city manager as designate employees to issue citations, non-compliance of revisions of the code of the city of Augusta, Kansas by adding section 1002 to said code and repealing all conflicting ordinances and parts of ordinances by the city of Augusta, Kansas. Consider approval of proposal for schedule resolution 2020-08, establishing a fee for valid permit on Augusta City Lake.
Jamie will second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance as written tonight. Erica, can you call the roll?
Yes, Burke,
No.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
No.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. That, let's move to matters from and for the council. Josh, can you put us back on the screen? Eric, do you have anything?
No, sir, I do not.
Mr. Huddleston, do you have anything?
Has everyone got a memo from the city manager over the weekend? I'm kind of concerned about the pay ordinance for the council. How are we going to handle that?
Yeah, I spoke to Austin today, and we found the what I'm going to call the most recent one. It's the most recent one we've seen in our records from 1986. So there's a sentence in our code that says council pay is to be set or is to be fixed by ordinance, which is strange that that's what the code says, considering that an actual ordinance was adopted 5 years earlier that set that number, but it doesn't appear in any of our recent codes. So the last time council actually changed pay was in 2015. You had staff research it during our budget work sessions, what other communities were paying, and then had that as an action item for the 2016 budget, and it was approved by council as part of the 2016 budget. But in terms of that code, it says it should be fixed by ordinance, which staff cannot find a copy that we actually did that by ordinance. And so staff believes that we need to bring something back for council to correct that and get that done, and we can have that at the next meeting. But that's what we were able to find on that issue today. So however you guys wanted to discuss that, but that would be essentially to do the ordinance and correct that for the action that you took in the 2016 budget to make that change. Austin, I don't know if you have any feedback, if you think we need to do anything more than that, and can advise council. That was pretty much our conversation today, though.
Absolutely, Josh. I'm 100% in agreement. That's exactly what we talked about. There's really nothing else to do at this point other than just adopt an ordinance at the next city council meeting.
Okay, Mike, did that answer your question?
Well, that was an answer, yes.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't.
Okay. Bill, do you have anything tonight?
No, Mike, I don't have anything.
Kip, do you have anything?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Tom?
Yes, Mike, I'd like to make a comment. It seems to me Letitia has been doing a fantastic job of keeping our cemetery looking great, especially with the upcoming Memorial Day. It's going to look fantastic, and it's looked great all year long. Her and her crew's been doing a great job out there. And one other question for anybody else that might be able to answer this. I have not seen anything published or not, whether or not there will be a memorial service held like they do every year at the cemetery.
Cody, have you heard from anyone on the memorial service?
I'm actually checking right now. I'll see if I can get an answer back here pretty quick.
That's all I have, Mike.
Okay. Jamie, do you have anything tonight?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to whoever sent, or thank you to Cody for sending out whoever to the alley, but on the Wiley Street. They were happy that somebody was out there taking care of that. And then my only other question is, and I don't know anything about this, but they were talking about if there was some way to pave that and flow it into that drain on Ada Street. So I'll throw that out there and let you take it wherever you want to. That's it.
Yeah, so Jamie Cody, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I went out there today. I was going to explain what we put the street crew saw out there.
I was just going to say that the streets has been pretty busy out there since last Friday, trying to figure out, what the issue is. They did find an inlet, interestingly enough, that I think they're trying to figure out the backstory with that inlet that would accept that storm drain. So streets is still very busy on that issue, trying to figure out what our path forward is. But I too am proud of their diligence to get out there pretty quick Friday. And thank you, Councilor Crum, for letting me know so I could get crews out there to take a look at that.
Thank
So
you.
I do have, if I may jump back to Tom's previous question here real quick, I just got a text message from Brian, and he says, I asked him if there's any word on Memorial Day services. He says, not sure at this point. They are putting out flags on Friday, so he's going to double check with Latasha tomorrow to see if anything has been scheduled or postponed or whatnot. So I will, when I hear, I will get word out to the council and let you guys know for sure.
Cody, I just got a text saying that there will be no memorial service.
Oh, very good. Very good. Sounds good. I'll let Brian know.
Okay. I had a citizen contact me actually today. And so I'm just going to throw this out there. We don't need any action on it, but I'd like some research on it possibly. This person has a house under demolition, remodeling. They have a city dumpster close by to an alley, and they can't get their stuff in it before it gets filled up during the week or the weekend by other citizens evidently in the area. So they think there's a need for us to scatter some dumpsters around in a citywide cleanup action is what they called it. I tried to explain to them what we'd done in the past because these people are new to town really. Anyway, they thought it'd be great if we'd just put some dumpsters around and let people throw some stuff away for a couple of weeks, and maybe it'd clean the town up, and they wouldn't have to pay the dumpster fee for everybody that they're looking at paying, I guess. And with that, that's all I have.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to recess an executive session for 20 minutes for preliminary discussions of the acquisition of real property for future city facilities pursuant to the preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property exception KSA 75-4319B6. I ask the city manager, Josh Shaw, assistant city manager, Cody Sims, the city attorney, Austin Parker, join the council in executive session. The open meeting of the governing body will convene at 9:09 p.m.
Councilman Leffler seconds the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Erica, could you call the roll?
Burt,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, for anyone still listening on the phone, we will leave this main meeting open, but the council and staff are going to retreat to the breakout room for that 20-minute period. And when we get done, we will be returning to this meeting. So you may get a blank screen for a while, but we will be back in 20 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to return to our council meeting from executive session where no action was taken.
Councilman Leffler seconds the motion.
Erica, can you call the roll, please?
Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of residential property, the agreement with, for $40,000 plus closing costs at 519 Grove Street in Augusta, Kansas, with a closing date to commence after 30 days. Also granting the staff leeway to increase that if needed by the seller.
Second the motion to purchase the property.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or discussion? Okay, Erica, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll second that.
Second.
Okay, after a motion and a few seconds, Erica, could you call the roll to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, Burke,
Yes.
Crum,
Yes.
Huddleston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Slade,
Yes.
motion to adjourn carries.
Have a great night, everyone.
Have a good night. Congratulations to all our graduates.